Well, I'm assuming that my other speaker will be here before I get through. So, but I worked with his set of slides, so I know what he's going to say too. So, just in case. But we'll go ahead and get started. I would like to welcome you here. How many in here, this is your first time ever to be at this conference? That's actually good. That means you're getting something out of it that is worth coming back to you. So that's really a good thing. But I'm Wayne Ebelhar. I'm an agronomist with Mississippi State University in my 40th year. You may have heard me say I've got 152 days. I forget how many hours, minutes, and seconds left. But Richard Turner, who's going to operate the slides, is my PhD student and my research associate. I told him that I would not leave until he got through, but that I was retiring June 30th. So if you were a graduate student and I told you that, how would you interpret that? Better get your butt done.
You'll stay longer.
No, I'm not staying longer. I own a house on the lake in Kentucky. So, but my wife's still going to be working. So anyway, it's good to have you here. The other speaker that is going to be on today with me is Chico Williams. Just a little bit of history about Chico. When I started Mississippi State in 1980, the first farm that I worked on was of Leo Williams the first. He is Leo Williams the third and has a Leo Williams the fourth. So I don't know if that means I've been around a long time or Chico's just a little squirt.
Yeah.
But anyway, he'll be talking a little bit about his farm operation, but it's good to have you with us. I'm going to be talking today about some work that we've got going on at Stoneville. I've worked in corn for probably the last 25 years. I was hired to work on cotton and rice when I was hired in 1980, of which neither one of those crops had I ever seen before. Next slide, Richard. I have worked on sesame, sunflower, sugar beets, you name it, I've worked on it. But my assignment now is cotton, corn, and soybeans. So when I came to work at Stoneville working on corn, we probably had 50,000 acres of corn. How many acres of corn do you think Mississippi grew in 1930? 35, 38, in the 30s. Anybody got a guess? How many million acres?
2 million.
4 million. In the late 1930s, Mississippi grew 4 million acres of corn, yielding about 15 or 16 bushel the acre, and 4 million acres of cotton. Now the significance of that is that as tractors came and horses and mules declined, corn went with it. All corn was used for was a feed crop. So we've seen a great deal of change in that. State average now is about 185 bushels per acre. So it's one of those things that has really come on. We've seen a lot of shift from growing cotton to growing grain crops. Okay. The work that I'm going to be talking about today was actually funded in part through the Mississippi Corn Promotion Board. It's been in existence probably 15, 20 years now. I did a lot of my early corn work on, I was thinking about it here from Cotton Incorporated, on Cotton Incorporated funds. They were bootlegged. When you work with crop rotation, you kind of get away with some of that kind of stuff, but next slide. The big question, I used to have a slide that said 300 or 250 to 300 bushel corn. Now I've got a slide that says 350 to 400 bushel corn. How many know what the record corn yield in the garden plots are today in Georgia?
508. That's
over 400 bushel of corn. It's over 400 bushel.
No.
But now, if you ask a couple of simple questions, which whole farm average? No answer. Did you make any money? No answer. Are you going to keep doing it on your whole farm? No way. Can't do it. So some of the questions that we've been asked, there's a lot of things that limit production. I'm going to talk about just two today. I'm going to talk about seeding rates and nitrogen rates. So, Richard, I started working in twin row corn in 2005 on Reality Partnership, which was George Ray and Martin Walker. George Ray's dad and granddad were involved with Stoneville Pedigree Seed Company, the founders. And by 2003 to 2004, they were no longer growing cotton, but had started growing corn. They were growing twin row beans and looked at the twin row corn. So my first test with them was in 2005, but we didn't harvest it. Hurricane Katrina beat us to it. So this is 2006 data. And the two factors that we're looking at is seeding rates from 25,000 up to 40,000 plants per acre across nitrogen rates of 180, 220, and 260 pounds of N per acre. Now, this is following soybeans. So most of our corn, we recommend about 230, 240 pounds of N. We make an adjustment in there if we're following soybeans. Okay, Richard. This is means across replications and across N rates. And you'll notice here that when you see the letters A, B, C, D, E, that's what we use to designate statistical significance. And you see an increase, an incremental increase in yield as we went from 25,000 up to 40,000 seed per acre. Each one of those, the statistic says that they are different. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, the same thing is true with the nitrogen rates. So ABC says that those are truly different numbers. But look at the range, 250 to 255 bushel. But we went from 180 to 260 pounds of N. That's 80 pounds of nitrogen. Will 80 pounds of nitrogen be paid for by a few bushel of corn? No. So even though it's significant, statistically significant, it's not economical. So with the corn grain, it was. Next slide, please. So this is 2007. This is back in the same field that we were in 2005. So these plots are at least a half an acre in size. You know, people often wonder about the research that we do in so-called small plots. This is not small plot. This is a 40-acre field. So these were actually half-acre plots. So these are on-farm big plots. Again, you see the yield, they're going up. Next slide, please. Again, A, B, C, D, E. Each incremental increase in seeding rate gave us an increase in yield. So next slide. Same thing with nitrogen. Again, each increment, but now you're looking at the difference between 245 and 249, 4 bushel. Significant, but not economic. You know, adding that extra nitrogen, even though it gave us additional yield, we couldn't pay for the input. So as a farmer, if you can't pay for it, you can't justify doing it. And a lot of times a producer thinks in terms of, okay, I'm going to put it out here, a little bit better is more. But it actually you may be making more profit and producing less yield, but it's more profitable. Because we have this, what's called the law of diminishing return. As you get out to the extreme end, it starts getting pretty flat out there. So the most economical is to back off a little bit to get a little slope in there. So next slide. Now, so there's possibilities for increasing yield. Okay, first, okay, we can increase nitrogen rate or irrigation for yield stability. One of the things that we see a lot before we went to irrigation was, okay, we'd have 100 bushel corn, 180 bushel corn, 60 bushel corn, 200 bushel corn. So what's the limiting factor? Water. Okay, next. So we can increase the seeding rate with some of the new hybrids. Next. Okay, now what happens if you increase the seeding rate too high? Okay, we can start to get smaller stems, we get lodging. Okay, barren plants. What's a barren plant? It's a weed. It's a weed. If that plant is not producing grain, it is taking up energy, sunlight, it's taking up nutrients, it's taking up water, and giving you nothing. That's a weed. Okay, next. Okay, narrower rows. You know, you see in the Midwest, when I was a kid from Western Kentucky, we were growing 36, 38 inch. We went down to pretty much the 30 inch. On soybeans, we're down to 15 inch soybeans right now. Okay, in that part of the world, we're not on beds. Okay, in the South, because we have to get water on the field and off the field, we're pretty much tied into using bedded systems. So, next slide, please. So, if we try to get down to narrower beds, we end up with a lot of problems with compactions on the side of the road. You know, there's just a lot of expense with going that route. Next, please. Split applications we can put on. You know, we've done a lot of work with split applications of nitrogen on corn. Okay, go ahead. usually more expensive. Every time you go across the field, it costs you money to go out there. Foliar applications, I was told probably 39 years ago by a guy named Ish Spurgeon, born and raised in Arkansas, came to work at Mississippi State, worked there about 30 years. He told me one day, he said, if plants were meant to take up nutrients through the leaves, they'd have put their roots up there. Think about that. Where do most of your nutrients come from? From the roots. So he had a lot there. Next, please. I've done a lot of work with pre-tassel nitrogen. The thing that we have shown with that work is that putting out nitrogen at tassel can be taken up for the plant. Do you plan for that? No. Because, again, you're looking at a less efficient way to get nitrogen in the plant. You manage so that you don't have to do this. Now, we've got some farmers that do that. The reason I'm going to bring this up now is because when I get into the other research, it'll show that. Next slide, please. Okay, there's a lot of questions. It's a researchable topic. Okay, go ahead. Okay, objectives. So the objective, now the protocol was not designed by myself. It was designed by Dr. Brian Henry, agronomist at Mississippi State University, but we were doing it at Stoneville, trying to make it a project that a farmer in the Delta could work with. So we were looking at plant populations from 25,000 to 65,000 plants per acre. If you read some of the stories about these high yield growers, plant populations really, really high. So 65,000. We looked at both single row and twin row. We felt like that we can up the population. You saw in the earlier work on twin rows, we were up at 40,000 plants and it was still climbing. So next one, please, Richard. Because we wanted to look at the interaction, what happens if you put these two things together? Okay, it may be if you increase the seeding rates, you might have to increase the nitrogen rates or vice versa. Last one. Okay, we wanted to see, if there's any effect on grain size or ear numbers, bushel test weight. Now, I'm not going to talk about any of that kind of stuff, but we've been looking at all of that. Okay, next, please. Okay, so this field is located on the experiment station. It's on a Vosket very fine sandy loam, one of our better corn and cotton soils, has good production potential. We looked at nitrogen rates again from 240 up to 320 pounds of N per acre. Go ahead. Okay, the way we put it out, I put out 120 pounds before I planted. And then at the 3 to 4 leaf stage, went back and put on another 120 pounds. So now I have our recommended level of 240 pounds of N per acre out there by the 3 to 4 leaf stage. Now we recommend getting it out there by no later than the 5 to 6 leaf stage. So we had it out at the 3 to 4 leaf stage. Okay, the whole field has been treated the same right now. So we came back in, okay, now at the 5 to 6 leaf stage, last time we could pretty much get through the field, put out another 40 pounds of N. So now you've got half the field at 240, half the field at 280. So then we came back with another 40 pounds of N on 1/4 of the field. On half of the 280s, we added another 40 pounds. That went out as urea with a simulated aerial application, which means it was broadcast by hand. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we used ammonia UAN solution as a liquid, put it out, we knocked it on both sides of the road. Remember, we've got twin rows and single rows in here. The data that we have shows that you cannot put nitrogen on just one side of the row in twin rows. You cannot water alternate rows. You have to put water down every row and nitrogen down every row, because with corn, if one plant gets ahead, it stays ahead and this row becomes a weed. That's just a competition in corn that you don't see in soybeans. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, then the seeding rates were from 25 up to 65,000 plants per acre. Okay, next. Go ahead and put the next one up too. Yeah, it kind of faded out here, but okay, this is just to give you kind of a little synopsis of what happens. Okay, if you go from, if you've got $300 a bag corn and you go from 25,000 up to 65,000 plants per acre, you go from $93.75 to $243.75 an acre. That's $300 a bag corn. Okay, setting in the bag. If you go from 240 up to 320, depending on the cost of your fertilizer, I put several possibilities there, but let's take $250 a ton, and we're just going to assume it was all UAN solution. So that means it's $125. So you've got 243 plus $125. So you got approximately $375 sitting in the tank and in the bag, nothing else is done. And corn is $3.80 a bushel, or say $3.75 a bushel. How much corn do you have to cover the cost of seed and fertilizer? 100 bushel. 100 bushel of corn just to cover the cost of seed and fertilizer. Okay? All right, next. Okay, so getting into the results. Okay, go ahead. Okay, this is I've got data in here for 2017, 2018, 2019. Go on to the next slide. This shows, that slide shows you all the treatment combinations that we have. I broke it down here. This is main effects of the seeding rates. This is average across N rates. But if you notice here, okay, everything was better than 25,000. We haven't been at 25,000 in a good while in irrigated corn. You know, we're actually in almost all irrigated corn now. We recommend irrigated corn. Okay, if you look from 25 to 35, you went from 216 to 241, but going from 35 to 45, there's a 3 bushel increase. Not significant. You go on up, and we actually got a yield decrease out there at the end. Now, why do you think that might be? Barren plants, competition, lodging. A lot of things can happen if you got too much out there. So go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is a comparison of nitrogen rates for single row and twin row. Next one. Okay, this is 2017. So in 2017, we had 241 bushel corn in single rows, 235 bushel. So about 5-6 bushel advantage to single row corn in 2017. Now that's a little bit different than what we've seen other years, okay, but still you look at the yields. Okay, look at the nitrogen there, 238, 243, 241. We didn't pay for it. That is not a limiting factor. You go to twin rows, the same thing, 235, 236, 236. There's no response to the added nitrogen, so you just put 80 pounds of nitrogen out there at the cost of application, the cost of an airplane, cost of the material. No additional yield. Okay, what happens? You lose money. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is 2018 data here. Same thing, again, there's the treatment differences are there. You see single row and twin row across there. Go to the next one. Okay, now, this is 2018. Again, averaged across single row and twin row, but the rate response. Okay, in this year, 45,000 plants per acre were better than 35,000 acres. You've got a B and an A. So you added about 11 bushels per acre by going from 35,000 up to 45,000 plants per acre. Now do the math. You know, did it pay for itself? Yeah, it did that year. You know, that's pretty easy math. But going from 45 to 55, 55 to 65, no difference. So adding that extra grain out there, the extra 100 bushel, $100 an acre to plant it didn't give you any extra yield. Okay, next one. Again, here's a nitrogen comparison. Now, you do see a difference between single row and twin row. You've got A's and B's, but within each group, they're all the same. The twin rows are all the A. Put up the next one. The difference here, though, in 2018, remember in 17, we had a significantly higher yield with single rows. This is 2018. Twin rows were 25 bushel an acre higher than single rows that particular year. So what's the difference? We had a lot of rainfall. Now, in 18, we tried to irrigate this field. Every time we irrigated, it rained. We irrigated the field 3 times and it rained 3 times. So irrigation really wasn't a factor, except we got a lot of rain that year. Our average rainfall for 18 was 77 inches. 19 was 81 inches. Our average, our normal is 52. So we've had a lot of rainfall. Okay, next slide, Richard. Okay, this is 2019. Again, you're looking at pretty good yields here. You know, we got 250, 260, but you don't see anything, you don't see a single 300 in there. Nor have you seen a single 300. In 3 years of research, we've not had a 300 bushel yield. So what does that tell me? We haven't hit the limiting factor right there, other than we're 100 bushel ahead of the state average. The state average is 185, and we're at 200 and, well, we're 80 bushels. But, okay, next slide. Okay, you see here again, okay, we've got a little bit of response, and we still, this year, 45,000 plants per acre. So it looks like, you know, that we can manage 45,000 plants per acre in most years on twin rows. Now, this is average across the two. Next slide, please. Okay, this goes back. Now, you see, last time the A's were on the twin rows. This time it's on the single rows. Put the next one up. Okay, you're looking at about a 7.5, 8 bushel decrease this year with twin rows. So we've had 5 one way, 25 the other way, 7 or 8 the other way. So, it's kind of flopping around. But, that one advantage, and every time it's significant, but in every one of these cases there's been no response to nitrogen. Okay, go ahead. So let's get that summarized for you kind of quickly here. Okay, just work through these, Richard, one at a time. Okay, the initial on-farm work that we did back in the 2005, 6, 7 years, we saw a significant yield increase up to 40,000 plants per acre, but we had not, they were still continuing to increase. So, okay, go ahead. Okay, the increasing in seeding rates and in rates cost big money and may not provide any return. You saw that slide I put up earlier showing you the cost of the seed. Even though we got a response to nitrogen, we couldn't pay for it. I mean, the economics are everything in this situation. Next. Okay, when you average across those two inputs, grain yields, they were 11% between 25 and 17% in 2018, going from 25 to 35. That's a pretty substantial increase. In the last 2 years, both 18 and 19, one where twin row was better, one where single row was better, it actually showed a response up to 45,000 plants per acre, okay? Single row, we saw that was better in 17 and 19, twin rows was better in 18, okay? Go ahead. In 3 years, we never saw a response to nitrogen. In all 3 years, okay? Yields showed no benefit of increasing in rates, going all the way up to 320 pounds. And it's expensive to go to 320 pounds if it's not needed. And you didn't get a response to it, that cost you money. Over 3 years, grain yields have been significantly higher with seeding rates they've not been higher or exceedingly higher if you go above 45,000 in none of those 3 years, okay? And there's many factors that can limit the overall production. We've just talked about 2 of them here. But what's the driving factor? Hit the last one. Economics. That's going to be the driving factor. Any kind of practice that you're looking at adopting, whether it be increasing in rates, twin row, variable rate, you got to pay for it. You got to pay for collecting the information to base your adoption and then pay for the adoption. So you got 2 things there, and a lot of times you don't see much discussion about, and I'm going to use another example, cover crops. How many of you seen an economic analysis of cover crops? Anybody? It's because they don't exist. There's a lot of tout for cover crops, but nobody wants to talk about the economics. You as a producer, the only way you can adopt it is you have to be able to pay for it. Can you save money by using less nitrogen? Can you save money by using less fertilizer, less herbicide? The thing is, we found is it actually takes more fertilizer, especially if you're using a grass crop. So, the economics is a driving factor. So, go ahead. One more. All right. With that, I'll take any quick questions before I turn it over to Chico, if we have any.
The data that you put up, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Was that on 30 row, on your single rows, was that 30-inch rows?
No, 40-inch rows.
40-inch rows.
These are 40-inch row systems.
Okay.
So we have looked, no, I have not looked at 30-inch, well, we have looked at 30-inch row corn. Our situation deals with those beds and trying to keep a bed. I've worked with 30-inch row cotton. We couldn't keep a bed for 30-inch row cotton, even for single row. I've never looked at twin row cotton, but single row cotton, we've got to be able to keep a bed up there because we have to be in our situation, 77 and 81 inches of rain. That's a lot of water to get on and off the field. Right. Get it on with rainfall, it's an irrigated area. So these are all based on 80, George Ray's field that I showed you first was 38-inch rows. On 40-inch rows, you've got 30 inches, 10 inches, 30 inches, 10 inches. On 38-inch rows, you've got 30 inches, 8 inches, 30 inches, 8 inches. So the distance between the rows, well, we keep the 30 inches so we can get through there, but it's on the sides of the bed, we don't have the compaction issues. So yeah, this is strictly 40, well, and on farmer's 38. Somebody else had a question.
Well, that was actually mine, but I'm on 60-inch beds. You made a comment a while ago. I'm on 30-inch rows and 60-inch beds. I'm putting, 2 rows on a bed. But you said something a while ago about, like, with having them 2 rows on that 60-inch bed, and I've seen what you're talking about. I get a taller row and a shorter row.
Well, and what I was referring to, though, was in our 40-inch row system, that you see farmers a lot of times that will put 2 knives in one middle, the next middle has no knives in it, okay? And then they'll run water down the rows where the fertilizer is. Okay, with twin row corn, okay, if you've got a bed that looks like this, and you've got a plant over here, and you put the fertilizer here, it's almost impossible for it to get from here through this row over to this side of the bed. Same thing with water. So what happens is you get this row grows bigger than this row. So once you get that shading effect, that differential continues. And it's very difficult. On your 60-inch rows, where do you put your fertilizer? You've got 2 rows, I'm assuming on
Yes,
30 inch?
I mean, I've been broadcasting, this year. I'm going to the Y drop to actually put.
But on the surface?
Yes.
On the surface?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm putting the Y drops on instead of running the coulter, I'm putting the Y drops in place of the coulter where I can run it actually, it lays it basically at the stalk.
But on the surface?
On the surface.
On the surface.
Yes.
The problem that I have with that is the volatilization, potential loss of nitrogen. Even on, I use rolling coulters to get it at least an inch or 2 into the ground so that I don't have to rely on that first bit of rainfall or an irrigation to carry it into the soil. Are you irrigated?
Yes.
Okay, so you're irrigating on the outsides of your 60-inch beds. You have no water going down the middle.
No.
So you've got water, you've got a row, nothing in here, and water on the outside, okay?
But, and I've always thought that, literally the middles that the water is in, it's just solid root mass. It's soaking that row, but it's not
soaking all the way across.
Complete bed. No.
Right.
So you're putting out all your nitrogen up front?
No,
Or after?
120, 120, 40, 40.
Okay,
So it was actually went out as 4 applications.
4 applications.
4 on the highest end rate. On the low end rate, 2 applications. On the middle, 3, the highest 4. Because what we're trying to do is keep it uniform till we get to a certain point. And then we're going to add a little bit more, like a farmer would do. And then that last one was what I call the pre-tassel shot. We already had 280 pounds out there. So the other data that I have says that we probably shouldn't get a response to that if nitrogen is not limiting, and obviously with the yields not being any different, it wasn't limiting. So, any other? I'm going to turn it over to Chico. Chico, just to give you a little bit of information, when he was a little boy, now he's not a little boy today, he has a little boy, their family were rice farmers. Today, he grows no rice. I'm going to let him tell the rest of the story. Yeah.